Hello everyone. Today I will take you on another creepy journey into the forest. The story I am going to tell you today is about an incident that happened when Tyler went into the forest with his best friend for research purposes. However, they encountered mysterious occurrences within that forest. Moreover, there was something that followed them out of that forest. And because of this, Tyler discovered a secret that someone had been hiding for many years. Before we dive into our scary story, we would like to ask everyone to like and subscribe to support us in continuing to bring you more terrifying tales in the future. The whole story must be traced back to July of the year 2012. The main people involved in this story are a total of 4 individuals: Tyler, Finn, Yara, and Ella. These 4 have been friends since high school, and because of their close relationship, Finn and Yara agreed to date each other as a couple. The same goes for Tyler and Ella. Moreover, all 4 of them attended the same university. After graduation, they each worked at their desired companies. Finn and Yara worked together at a foreign pharmaceutical company. Several years later, Finn contacted Tyler to inform him that his company had an important project related to the research of an extract from a specific herb. However, this herb typically grows deep in the forests near the border of Thailand. For this project, Finn was in charge alongside his girlfriend. Consequently, they needed to go into the forest to collect herb samples. They took the opportunity to invite Tyler and Ella to travel to the countryside together. At that time, Tyler and Ella were happy to accept the invitation because they hadn't had a chance to meet since entering the working life. After agreeing on the date, time, and location, when the day of the journey arrived, they all headed to their destination. Upon arrival, Finn contacted a local hunter named Mong, an expert in the forest where Finn planned to collect the rare herbs. Mong explained to everyone that traveling to that part of the forest was quite dangerous due to the rainy season. But what Mong saw as even more dangerous was that the period during which the event took place was a closed forest season, making the journey extremely difficult. However, since Finn's project had a set deadline, and he wanted to finish collecting the samples, he didn't want to waste the trip. Moreover, Finn offered Mong a special bonus if he completed the project on time. Mong sighed but eventually accepted Finn's proposal. Upon reaching the entry point to the forest, Mong performed a forest opening ritual for everyone. Although Finn, who had always studied and worked in science, didn't believe in these things, he wanted to complete his work and agreed to follow Mong's instructions. Mong then brought out an incense stick along with offerings, began chanting, and planted the incense into the ground. He explained that if the incense burned completely, it meant they were allowed to enter. But if it went out before burning completely, it meant the forest spirits did not permit them entry. Everyone waited for a while, and soon enough, the incense went out abruptly. According to Mong, this meant the forest spirits did not allow them to enter. But since Finn didn't believe in these things, he raised his voice and argued with Mong, reasoning that the incense went out due to the moisture in the air, and it had nothing to do with forest spirits permitting or not permitting entry. Mong then told Finn that even if he didn't believe in these things, at the very least, he needed to be cautious of flash floods and the dangers posed by wild animals since they were going into a deep forest. At that moment, Finn insisted on going into the forest that day, forcing Mong to reluctantly agree to lead them in under the condition that they must follow all of Mong's instructions. Anything forbidden was strictly prohibited without exception. Upon hearing this, all 4 quickly agreed, eager to enter the forest and disregarding the potential consequences of not following the instructions. After everyone finished preparing their gear, they began their journey into the forest. This journey would take 2 days, with Mong explaining that during these 2 days, they would have to stay in 2 separate tree houses, one on the first night and the second after collecting the herbs. After walking for a while, they reached the first tree house where they would spend the night. Everything went smoothly on the first day, but on the morning of the second day, they resumed their journey, venturing deeper into the forest until they reached an area abundant with various wild herbs. Finn and Yara immediately knew that this spot would have the herbs they needed. They separated to search for the specific herb and soon found it. After collecting what they needed, Mong insisted that they leave the forest immediately. However, on their way to the second treehouse, Ella suddenly needed to relieve herself. Mong allowed her to go but warned everyone to wait for her there and instructed Ella to avoid large trees or hollowed-out trunks. Ella nodded and went off alone. When she returned, everyone noticed that she was acting strangely. No matter what anyone said to her, she wouldn't respond and only kept walking. After some time, Mong urged everyone to pick up the pace to reach the second treehouse before sunset, fearing potential dangers if they were delayed. As Mong spoke, Ella tripped over a root and fell. When everyone checked on her, she said she couldn't walk anymore because her ankle seemed sprained and swollen. She asked to rest for a while before continuing. However, since the sun was about to set, Mong insisted they help Ella walk to a safer resting place. They reached a clearing where Mong decided they would have to spend the night. After setting up the tents, Mong asked Tyler to take over the watch from him at 4 a.m. They then went about their personal tasks and retired to their tents. Finn, unable to sleep, noticed his girlfriend asleep beside him. While trying to fall asleep, the campfire's light cast a shadow of someone walking past his tent. Initially, Finn thought it was Mong on watch duty. He watched the shadow, but it remained still near the fire, not moving at all. Soon, Finn heard a sound resembling a musical instrument, like wood clacking rhythmically. The sound grew closer to his tent. When Finn looked at the fire again, he saw multiple shadows where there was only one before. These shadows appeared to be dancing to the rhythm and gradually moved closer to his tent until one pressed its face against the tent, startling Finn. He screamed, and Mong rushed to the tent to see what was happening. At that moment, the mysterious shadows vanished as if nothing had happened. When Finn opened the tent, Mong came in and asked what had happened. Since Finn didn't believe in the supernatural, he didn't tell Mong anything and simply said that he thought a poisonous insect had gotten into his tent. Mong nodded and returned to his watch, while Finn tried to sleep to get through the night. At around 4 a.m., Tyler went to take over the watch from Mong as agreed. Finn, still unable to sleep, decided to join Tyler. By 6 a.m., everyone packed up to continue their journey. They eventually reached the treehouse where they had stayed on the first night. Mong told everyone they were close to the exit and urged them to quicken their pace. However, after about 4 hours, Mong couldn't lead them out of the forest. It seemed they were repeatedly circling back to the first treehouse. Mong assured them he knew the way out but couldn't understand why they were lost. He asked if anyone had taken anything from the forest besides the herbs, but everyone insisted they had only taken the herbs. Seeing the situation worsening, Mong took out a magic knife he had brought, chanted a spell, and cut into a nearby tree. Suddenly, Ella collapsed to the ground as if frightened. Her friends rushed to check on her, but Ella insisted she was fine. Mong called Tyler aside and asked him to secretly question Ella about the date they had started dating. When Tyler asked Ella, she avoided the question, saying they should focus on finding the way out instead of asking trivial questions. This made Tyler suspect that something was off with his girlfriend. Tyler reported this to Mong, who showed visible concern. Suddenly, Mong approached Ella, who tried to avoid eye contact and backed away as if scared of Mong. As Mong got closer, he unexpectedly raised his gun and aimed at Ella without any explanation. Seconds later, he fired, and Ella collapsed with a gunshot wound to her neck. Everyone was shocked and started shouting at Mong, accusing him of being cold-blooded. Amid the chaos, Ella's body rose, despite the neck wound. She calmly adjusted her head back to its original position, revealing that the person standing there wasn't the real Ella. The entity resembling Ella laughed and said, "You won't survive." Mong prepared to shoot again, but the entity leaped into the trees and disappeared into the forest. Mong explained that this was likely why they couldn't find their way out. Everyone wondered where the real Ella was if that wasn't her. Tyler then shared that on the night they camped in the forest, he saw Ella alternately crying and laughing in the tent, which he dismissed as sleep-talking. Later, he heard her leave the tent, assuming she was attending to personal needs, until he heard Finn shouting. When Tyler looked again, Ella was back in the tent. Believing Finn's claim of a poisonous insect, Tyler didn't check outside. At that moment, Mong decided to lead the three of them back to the spot where they had camped the previous night. However, there were no traces of Ella at that location. They then walked back towards the waterfall. Along the way, Mong noticed only the footprints of himself and the remaining three, realizing that Ella's footprints had disappeared from the spot where she had gone to attend to personal matters. They quickly followed Ella's footprints, but there was still no sign of her. Eventually, Mong saw a large tree hollow that seemed to have something hiding inside, as it was covered with branches and leaves. Mong aimed his gun at the hollow and shouted, "Who's in there? Come out now or I'll shoot." Suddenly, a mysterious hand emerged from the hollow, revealing Ella, who looked exhausted and weak. Tyler rushed to her and carried her back to the treehouse Mong had built for their second night stay. Once they arrived, everyone climbed up to the treehouse. Tyler and the others asked Ella about what had happened, but she kept saying she was scared and didn't want to talk about it then. She asked to leave the forest first, promising to tell them everything later. They didn't press her further and let her rest. The events that the four had experienced during Ella's disappearance left them too frightened to sleep that night. The atmosphere was eerily quiet, with not even the sound of wind. Mong appeared agitated, prompting Tyler to ask if he was all right. Mong didn't respond but pointed to the top of a tree, which seemed to be shaking strangely. Mong then said, "If anything happens tonight, do not leave the treehouse under any circumstances." As time passed, just as they were about to fall asleep, strange things began to occur again. They heard footsteps under the treehouse throughout the night and voices calling their names. Some even saw their friends, who were supposed to be in the treehouse, appearing mysteriously below. They prayed for morning to come, eager to leave the forest. At dawn, they quickly packed up and left the forest as soon as possible. Mong led them out safely in less than half an hour. After the ordeal, Finn and Yara took the plant they had collected for further research. Ella then recounted her experience during her disappearance. She said that after attending to personal matters, she couldn't find anyone at the spot where they were supposed to meet. She waited until dark, but there was no sign of her friends. Not knowing what to do, she sat under a large tree and cried. While sobbing, she saw a child watching her from a distance. When she turned to look, the child hid behind the tree, which frightened her. Suddenly, an old man with a dark complexion, wearing a sarong and a checkered shoulder cloth, appeared near where she was sitting. Assuming he was a hunter, she asked for help, explaining she had lost her group and guide. The old man said, "I warned you, but you didn't listen. Follow me." Believing he could lead her out of the forest, she decided to follow him. The old man led her back to the spot where Ella had attended to her personal matters earlier and pointed to a large tree hollow, instructing her to hide inside and not to come out under any circumstances, no matter what happened. This was contrary to what she had expected. At that moment, the old man said that this was his home and that she could enter without fear if he allowed it. This statement surprised Ella, but she had no other choice. She decided to hide inside the hollow as instructed, and the old man covered the entrance with branches and leaves, emphasizing once again not to come out until her friends arrived. Afterward, the old man disappeared into the darkness, leaving Ella crying in fear inside the hollow. Ella recounted that she heard footsteps passing by the hollow throughout the night. At one point, she noticed a procession passing by outside, accompanied by the sound of musical instruments and people performing strange and eerie dances. Overwhelmed by fear, she accidentally cried out, which caught the attention of the procession. A dancer slowly approached her hiding spot, removed their mask, revealing a face covered in blood and pus with bulging eyes. While Ella was stunned by the sight, she felt something coiling next to her. Glancing over, she saw the child who had been watching her earlier now sitting beside her, gesturing for her to be quiet. After that, Ella lost consciousness and remembered nothing until the next morning when she found Mong aiming his gun into the hollow. She then decided to step out and reunite with everyone. After that incident, everyone went back to their normal lives, but things didn't turn out as expected. One day, Finn called Tyler to tell him that Yara, his girlfriend, was acting strangely. Tyler and Ella decided to visit Finn at his home. When they arrived, they noticed Finn looked noticeably thinner and his face appeared haggard, as if he had been cursed. When they inquired about Yara's condition, Finn explained that since they returned from the forest, they had frequent arguments, leading them to separate. Yara often accused Finn of having an affair, though he had no idea where she got that notion. Finn mentioned that that morning, Yara had called him in a panic, asking him to come to her condo because it was filled with unknown people. Out of fear, Finn called Tyler for help. They quickly went to Yara's condo, knocking on the door for a while, but she didn't answer. They could hear her phone ringing inside the room. Finn then contacted the condo management to open the door, fearing something bad had happened. When the door was finally opened, a foul stench filled the air. They searched the room but found no one inside, and the smell kept getting stronger. As Finn walked past the wardrobe, the door creaked open, revealing Yara's lifeless body falling out. Her corpse was in a state of rigor mortis, swollen, with her arms and legs rigid and her hands covering her face as if she had died in terror. The sight shocked everyone, and Ella screamed in horror at the sight of the body. At that moment, the condo management called the police to investigate the scene. According to the officers' initial assessment, they suspected that Yara had been dead for at least 2 days. This was very strange because Finn said Yara had just called him that morning. The autopsy results revealed that Yara had died of a heart attack. After Yara's funeral, Finn asked to stay at Tyler's house for several nights because he said he couldn't be alone. On the first night that Finn stayed at Tyler's house, he suddenly started screaming in the middle of the night. Tyler and Ella rushed to see what was happening. and Finn told them that in his dream, Yara's spirit came to take his life. Finn then explained what might have caused Yara's death. He recalled that Yara had told him, while they were staying in the forest hideout, that the spirit of the woman Mong shot whispered in her ear, accusing Finn of having an affair. The spirit promised to help her get revenge if she helped it escape the forest. Finn added that Yara had allowed the spirit to follow her out of the forest. However, Finn dismissed her story as nonsense, leading to more severe arguments between them and ultimately their separation. The next morning, Tyler and Ella took Finn to a temple to seek help from a monk. The monk said it was time for them to face the consequences of their actions, pointing to Ella and implying that they both knew what they had done. Tyler looked at Ella in confusion and asked Finn and Ella what the monk meant. Ella then revealed the truth. During their university days, Finn and Ella were in the same faculty, while Tyler and Yara were in different faculties. This led to Finn and Ella becoming too close and eventually doing something they shouldn't have. Ella unknowingly became pregnant and consulted Finn about having an abortion, to which he agreed. After that, they both resumed their lives as if nothing had happened. The strange events during their forest trip, including Yara's mysterious death, seemed to be the consequences of their actions. Shortly after, Finn died from a chronic illness, and Ella was sued for fraud by someone else. It seemed that the misfortunes they experienced were indeed the karmic retribution the monk had mentioned.